SCA Minhag of the Week. Tefillin of Rabbenu Tam. So as we know, every morning we wear tefillin, and our tefillin are generally referred to as Rashi. And there is another pair of tefillin called Rabbenu Tam. Let me explain. There is in the rosh, in the head of the tefillin, there are 4 compartments, and in each compartment there is a chapter of the Torah that has to be there. So there's an order as to what goes in the first compartment, second compartment, third compartment, fourth compartment, based upon the understanding of Rashi, which is also the understanding of Rambam. The order has to be first Kaddish Li, then Behaya Ki Bi'acha, and then Shema Yisrael, and then Behaya Im Shamawa. And this is the standard practice of all Jews, Sephardim and Ashkenazim, and it's currently referred to as Tefillin of Rashi. There is another opinion, there are many other opinions, but another famous opinion, and that is the opinion of Rabbenu Tam, who happened to have been the grandson of Rashi, and his opinion was no. You have to have the 2 Vehayas, the Vehaya Ki Bi'acha and the Behaya Im Shamoa, as the 2 middle compartments, flanked by Kaddish Li on one side and Shema Yisrael on the other side. As we know, we follow plain halacha, wear the tefillin of Rashi, Rambam, and that's what we pray with. In recent times, and very recent times I should say, we're seeing many men that are wearing 2 tefillin. And what are they doing? They're taking off their tefillin after they finish the Amidah. They're taking off the Rashi tefillin and they're putting on Rabbenu Tam tefillin. And after they put it on, they recite the parashiyot of V'daber and V'haya Ki Bi'acha and Shema and V'haya Im Shamoa, and then they'll continue their prayers with them and then remove them. Why didn't we see this before? What's going on? Is this our custom? Is it not our custom? So the custom is, and this is very clear, that only the greatest of rabbis wore both types of tefillin, and they had very small tefillin and they wore them together. Well known for this was our first chief rabbi, Dr. Jacob S. Kasson, alav shalom. He wore 2 tefillin together. And his son, chief rabbi after him, Rabbi Shaul Kassin, also wore 2 tefillin together. And there were a few other great rabbis that did this. But everybody else, nobody wore another pair of tefillin. They only wore the Rashi tefillin and nothing else. What is the halacha? The halacha tells you, Maran Shulchan Aruch, in Siman Lamed Dalet, and we don't generally like to touch halacha in Minhag of the Week, but we have to understand what's going on. So he tells us the Minhag of the world is to wear the tefillin of Rashi or Rambam, whatever we want to call it. And he says, but because of the other opinion, it's good to fulfill the other opinion. But then he tells us, Lo ya'aseh chen illa mi shemuhzak umfursam b'hasidut. This is not for everybody to do. The only person, or the only people that should be doing this, wearing 2 tefillin, are those individuals that are well known to be extremely pious. In other words, great hachamim. It's not for the average person. But nowadays we see the average person doing this. And also, if you look at Shulchan Aruch carefully, and you look at all the Sephardic sources carefully, they all talk about wearing the 2 tefillin together, not one after the other. Okay, they had small tefillin. Now, what was the minhag in Aleppo? Everybody keeps asking me, did people do this? So yes, there were times where there were hachamim who wore 2 tefillin together. Looking at the writings of Chacham Abraham Antebi in his Ohli Sharim. He was the chief rabbi of Halab in the 1800s. Yes, he talks about people who wore two tefillin together. Hacham Abraham Hamui in his Bet Kaporet also talks about it. Okay, but neither one mentions it as a common custom, just that there were those who did it. Let's move to our more modern times, to the 20th century. So, Hacham Yitzhak Shehebar in his Yitzhak Ranin was asked the question, do we wear two tefillin? And he writes very, very clearly that only Tamidei Hachamim, only the rabbis, would wear two tefillin. Some wore it together, and some prayed only with the Rashi tefillin in the Knis, and only after that they went home and privately put on their Rabbenu Tam tefillin and recited the 4 parashiot with the Rabbenu Tam tefillin on at home, not in the Beit Knesset. And we have the testimony of Hacham Yitzhak Tawil regarding his father, Hacham Moshe Tawil, who was the chief rabbi of Aleppo, and he said that my father never wore two tefillin together in the Beit Knesset. Only once he finished praying with the Rashi tefillin in the Beit Knesset, he would go home and privately put it on. And most people never knew that he did this. This was a private matter. This was not something that was done by the common folk. And nowadays that we're seeing everybody doing it, and they are not muhzak b'hasidut. They are not known as being, scrupulous, religious, pious individuals. They should not be doing it based upon the traditions that we have upheld based upon Shulchan Aruch. And that is our minhag.